toxic masculinity.
Manhattan DA's office will no longer prosecute prostitution cases. Yeah, because people need to make money. Like,
You got to do something during the pandemic.
Yeah.
As soon as the pandemic hit and, our pocketbooks were, because Valeria couldn't work anymore, I was like, Valeria, I got a new career for you. And that was day trading crypto, not prostitution. But let's have a look at the folks who do want to talk about prostitution here. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong story. There we go. Manhattan DA's office will no longer prosecute prostitution. Well, here's the thing about that. A lot of people on the right agree with that. They're called libertarians. I disagree with this. I think this is a terrible move. And the reason is because there are certain kinds of jobs, certain kinds of professions, certain kinds of industries that naturally lead into massive and really vicious exploitation of people. I think pornography does that quite a bit. But pornography and prostitution both do that. The problem with pornography is pornography has been legal for so long, and it's such a massive industry. I don't think that anything can be done to tamp down on that anymore. But prostitution is like, so here's the thing with prostitution. You will often get people who are not interested in being prostitutes dragged into it, right? So, and what they tend to do, this is how human trafficking happens. And I interviewed a guy who specifically goes out and catches women who are, women who have been essentially kidnapped, and they're being sold into prostitution, or they're being used as prostitutes. And he goes and rescues them. His organization goes and rescues them. Fantastic organization. I forgot what they're called. They're down in San Diego. Angels or something. Hey, they're fantastic. I should probably have looked that up before the show. Anyway, great organization. And he was telling me about the details of this. And what they'll do is they recruit in like these gangs. Like a lot of times they're like Mexican gangs. But it's different kinds of gangs, different kinds of groups of people. But a lot of them are like somehow connected to Mexican cartels, stuff like that. And they'll get the young, good-looking guys. Mm-hmm. And they'll kind of train these guys how to pick up girls and get girls interested. And they'll get these guys, will basically find girls, maybe they're girls with like low self-esteem, something like that, but kind of cute, but they're very young girls, like teenagers, mm-hmm. 14, stuff like that. And they'll get the girls to think that the guy's like their boyfriend, right? The guy will treat them real nice, act like they're, spend money on them, stuff like that. And a lot of times they'll get them hooked on drugs. The guys will get them hooked on drugs. And then this girl needs the drugs more and more, so they need the drugs. And then they're basically owned by the gang. The gang then owns these girls. They can do what they want with them. And sometimes what the gang does is they then start pimping the girls out to these guys mm-hmm. that they want to buy prostitutes, or they'll actually sell the girls to other gangs and they'll get money that way. So it's a sort of profit mm-hmm. thing, a way to make money. And it's a profitable business because it's illegal, and not a lot of people are willing to do illegal things. And so the people who are willing to do illegal things can make a lot more money than people who aren't. So it's lucrative. Now, the libertarian says, well, if you make it legal and you regulate it, then all the women who want to do it will be able to do it, and all the women who want will not. Right? It'll be less. And that's true. But I think there's still going to be so much exploitation of so many women who don't necessarily want to get into it, and it's something that can be so traumatizing to a person, it can ruin somebody's life this way, that I don't think that it's something that we should allow in our society, because you are essentially giving opportunities to people who are already want to exploit other people. The same thing has been happening with the legalization of weed. People thought the legalization of weed was going to make all this money for the different cities and stuff. It's not. It's what you've done with the legalization of weed is you've made the people who used to be criminals rich. A lot of these people who were criminals are now rich, and a lot of these people who were selling weed, they sold multiple other kinds of illegal drugs, and now they have a legal way to launder the money that they're getting from the sale of their illegal drugs as well. There's a lot of problems that are propped up with this legalized weed thing, right? It's not necessarily good. The people are like, oh, the weed will be cleaner, it'll be better, nobody's going to go crazy. No, we have seen problems where schizophrenia is tied to heavy marijuana use. People have gotten a lot of health issues from the marijuana. I know a lot of people out there smoke pot and they're like, oh, pot's perfectly fine. Pot's perfectly fine. For you, maybe it has been fine. But for a lot of people, it's very dangerous. I don't like the legalization of drugs that mess people up. People say, well, alcohol is just as bad. Well, maybe alcohol should also be illegal. The problem with alcohol is it's so ingrained in so many cultures for so many thousands of years, it's really impossible to get rid of. So to say that like, oh, well, this drug's legal, so all drugs should be legal, that's a stupid argument. I don't like alcohol. I don't like how it's abused. I don't like how it causes all kinds of damage.
Well, my uncle died from alcohol, and my father, well, our family almost fell apart when my father was drinking. I was like too little to remember that. But my mom actually left him, grabbed me and left him with me. And he's like realized that what he's doing, and he stopped drinking. He even stopped smoking. He was smoking, drinking, and now they're still together.
Smoking cigarettes.
Smoking cigarettes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of problem with drugs. They mess people up, And
it's unusual in Russia stop smoking, because in Russia almost everyone smokes cigarettes. Yes.
And look, I mean, I certainly don't think it's the government's responsibility to protect everybody from everything, but there's no reason for people to be doing drugs, and there's no reason for that to be legal and to be abused by everybody. We don't want that kind of a society, right? It's sort of like the same thing as saying that child abuse is acceptable, right? I mean, all of these things are acceptable if we just imagine that morality is not really a thing, if God's not a thing, if faith is a lie. If we're just a bunch of particles in the universe, well, then nothing matters. Why is murder a problem, right? I mean, you could make the case that everybody has a right to do anything they want ever, and that's a perfectly reasonable way to live in the world. But the society's going to fall apart. You want some degree of boundaries. You want some degree of rules in order to maintain the integrity of society and to help people to live better, higher quality lives. The problem with the left is not that they want to regulate. Regulation is fine if what you're regulating improves everyone's quality of life, or improves, it's positive. The problem with the left is they regulate things that reduce people's quality of life. They regulate so much. Their answer to everything is regulation, regulation, regulation. We shouldn't be opposed to regulation just as a thing. We should be opposed to regulation that actually hurts people, which most regulation, I think, does. You want to veer on the side of caution by not infringing on people's rights, by not regulating. But that's not to say that regulation is a tool that we should just get away with altogether. I mean, a law against murder is a kind of regulation, right? It's a violation of your rights to some degree because it's not letting you do something that some people want to do. But we need laws, and I think that laws against prostitution are important to protect people who would otherwise be vulnerable of being pulled into it, that don't want to do it and would ruin their lives. Let's see here. But this guy says that he's going to stop prosecuting. In fact, so the Manhattan District Attorney will stop prosecuting prostitution and unlicensed massage cases. I think see, another thing is a way to get to people who are committing other more heinous crimes is for the police to be able to go after them for these lesser crimes. And so like an unlicensed massage person may in fact be a way to take down a human trafficking ring, right? That's why they have that. And it's tossing out thousands of warrants dating back as far back as 1975. The district attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. appeared virtually Wednesday in Manhattan criminal court to ask Judge Charlotte Davidson to vacate 5,994 bench warrants and dismiss the underlying charges of prostitution, unlicensed massage, and loitering for the purposes of prostitution. The motion was granted, and the cases dating back to 1975 were dropped. For years, the Manhattan DA has offered people facing these charges services and programs. Now will decline to prosecute these arrests outright, providing services and support solely on a volunteer basis, said Vance, who added that his office is the first in the state to take this step. Oh, you must be so proud. Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez's office also declines to prosecute prostitution cases, but only after services have been offered to defendants, a spokesman said. The announcement shows that the Manhattan DA is committed to changing its approach to the sex trade, the sex trade, by decriminalizing people who are in prostitution and supporting those most at risk of exploitation. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're supporting people at risk of exploitation. God, it's like these people don't know how the world works. This was said by the Reverend Dr. Q English of the New York State Anti-Trafficking Coalition. Cecilia Gentili, founder of Transgender Equity Consulting, lauded the new policy. So this guy that's dressed up as a woman, he thinks this is just fantastic. The resolute action to actively discriminate sex workers is the kind of change our community has been hoping for, advocating for decades, this thing said. The bulk of Manhattan dismissals relating to loitering for the purpose of prostitution cases, dubbed the walking while trans law, which advocates have long said unfairly targets minorities. I mean, I've heard that too. Like, if you arrest a trans prostitute, you're targeting minorities. I've never really understood that. It's because like a lot of black dudes are trans prostitutes or something like that. Is that what that's about?
I don't know.
It's weird, man. The bulk of the Manhattan dismissals related to loitering for the purpose of prostitution. Oh, sorry, we already got there. Earlier this year, the state legislature struck the controversial statutes from its books in response to Brooklyn, Queens, and Bronx DAs. In response, the Brooklyn, Queens, and Bronx DAs moved to vacate bench warrants stemming from the charge and dismiss all open cases. I mean, these cities are just getting worse and worse and worse. In the 1980s, New York was known for being like a crappy place. Like, you didn't want to go there. There was like trash all over the place. It was dirty. I mean, there was prostitution out in the open. There was gang violence. People were getting shot all the time. It was an incredibly violent, dirty, disgusting place with, sexual stuff all over the place. It was not a place you wanted children. It was not a place you wanted children. I lived there in about 2003. I lived in New York City, and it was pretty nice. I really liked it. You and I went there during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. There was almost nobody out. Different neighborhoods had different levels of disgustingness, but there was a lot of trash on the streets because the city had failed to clean up the trash. It was this weird epidemic. But beyond that, it was actually really, really nice because of COVID, nobody was outside. I mean, we were basically by ourselves most of the time, especially in the very south part of Manhattan. We went to the Statue of Liberty. That was awesome. That boat was actually pretty full, though, actually. A lot of people wanted to go to see the Statue of Liberty still. But, absolutely wonderful experience. Valeria actually admitted she loved New York. I want to get her one of those T-shirts. I heart New York.
I heart New York.
We had a great time. And it's sad to me. It's sad to me that one of the greatest cities in the history of the world is being destroyed by these leftist idiots. Most of the city's DAs had stopped prosecuting the crime years before it was repealed. A spokesman for Richmond County DA Michael McMahon previously told the Post that his office would follow suit. So a bunch of degenerate DAs. Look at this guy. What? You can tell just by his face he's a smug a-hole. All right, hold on. Kurt's written something. Democrats want to legalize everything because they themselves are criminals. I could not agree more. Kurt, you said it beautifully. All right. And on that bombshell, Valeria, our last story of the day. There's an echo effect. I didn't say that. I just put the echo thing. Anyway, go for it.
Don Lemon?
Don Lemon. You don't know the name Don Lemon?
Don Lemon. Sorry. I bad with names. If I see the person, I know the person, but names.
Yeah, but I like mocking you.
Don Lemon recommends white people read his book.
Yeah, Don Lemon is sitting here saying that if white people want to be better human beings, they should read his amazing book. All right, so let's have a look here. Promotes his own book as a recommendation for white people. So CNN host Don Lemon suggested his own book on Wednesday as a way for white people to learn about grace and accountability in the battle against racism. I would recommend a book that comes after that by this author, Don Lemon. Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.